Choose a book from your favourite subgenre. I'm Sean Connery. Hi and welcome back to BookTube with Amy. Today I am going to do the book palette tag. I was tagged in this by Scott and Nell at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, but the tag was created by Fraser Simon at Springboard Thought. For me, it is Maggie's Grave by David Sodergren. So this is the first David Sodergren book that I had ever read, and I read it last year. It was a 5-star read for me. It was amazing. It's a horror novel. David Sodergren is a horror author and he's also Scottish, which is fantastic. So it was like my two loves merged and just made an absolutely wee horrific haggis filled baby. And it was everything that I could have ever asked for. My gripe sometimes with horror fiction and with horror films is it can be a wee bit unbelievable sometimes, the characters' reactions to certain things, and for this one at least, I haven't read any other David Sodergren book yet, but for this one at least, the reactions for me as a Scottish gal were spot on. There was loads of swearing, there was digs at politicians, it was just fantastic. It was everything that I needed in a horror novel. Definitely one of the best horror books that I read last year. It was brilliant, and quickly after I finished reading it, I proceeded to add every single book that David Sodergren had written onto my Amazon wish list, and I got another couple for Christmas, so we'll definitely be reading them soon. I can't wait to get back into David Sodergren's twisted mind creations. They're great. So a bit of a cop-out, but I don't really have an answer to this question. I have never in my life reread a book that I didn't like. There are a limited number of books that I will be able to read in my lifetime. I am not going to spend 2 of those books on a book that I didn't like. So I've never reread a book that I disliked. I have reread books before, but I haven't reread anything in the past year, maybe 2 years. So, I reread Little Women for me and Simon's Book 101 series, but I have reread that several times and will always love it, so I have never changed my opinion on it. So I don't really have an answer for this one. I can't think of a book that I've reread even before then that I have changed my opinion on. I'm going to have to say the Twilight series. I think that when Twilight came out, people were unnecessarily harsh, not on just the books or just the films, but on Stephenie Meyer as a human being. And I was a big fan of the Twilight books when I was a 15-something girl, and I just felt like they were unfairly harsh on them. They aren't the best books that I have ever read, to be fair, and I think that now there is such a selection in YA fantasy, and YA fantasy is such a saturated genre that there are probably better books out there. Well, I say probably, there are better books out there, but you know, Twilight was one of the OG YA fantasy series, and I just didn't get what all the hate was. I feel like people just hated it because it was popular with teenage girls and for no other reason than that. I think that if people actually read them, like, they would probably see that they are okay stories. The characters in it were decent, the plot lines I felt were decently done, the writing wasn't phenomenal, but like for the age I was when I read them, they were grand, and I was like heavily obsessed. I've spoken about this in the channel before. I had like Twilight bedding and stuff, like that's the level of obsessive that I was at. And then when the films came out, I feel like people hated them even more, and like I think the films are great. Like I really do love the films, and I know that they are cheesy and at points they are cringy, but that makes me love them more. Like, I love to just put them on and sit and take the piss. Like, it is great and it's such fun. And earlier this year I got like addicted to Twilight TikTok videos, to the point that anytime I was laughing, Simon would be like, are we watching a Twilight video again? So it's just hours and hours and hours of entertainment and joy. I don't know why people hated them, other than for the fact that they were geared towards teenage girls. And I feel like this isn't just something that happens with Twilight, but I feel like this is the theme with a lot of things that hit the mainstream media that teenage girls are interested in. Like One Direction, people hated them, and I don't know why, because they had some fucking bops and they were a stylish wee group. Like, I think that people only hated them because teenage girls liked them. And I just don't know why, on top of everything else that society puts on teenage girls, why they also need to be insecure about their interests, and why people hate shit just because they like it. Like, what is wrong with people? So aye, that's my rant. Twilight. The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, definitely for me. I read this at the end of last year. It was the last book that I read, and I mean, I pretty much just wrote a love letter to it on the channel. I thought it was great, and while it didn't change anything, it didn't change the way that I viewed people, it changed the way that I thought about how I reacted to people. I am quite a fiery gal, as we know. I am quick to the ranting and swearing, and so if someone holds an opinion that I don't necessarily agree with, sometimes it's difficult for me to just let that go, and not challenge that view. And when I say challenge that view, I mean absolutely fucking roast them. So that's made me realise that there's a different way that I can respond to people who have ridiculous, in my opinion, opinions, and that I can respond to them a wee bit more kindly, and I can try and give them the benefit of the doubt, and I can try and initiate a dialogue with them, and that actually is more beneficial than just shutting them down and not having anything to do with them, because then I am challenging their views and we're having a discussion, and you know, like, we might actually get somewhere where we meet in that middle ground, which is how change is made. So it really made me think about that a lot, actually. Yeah, I feel like I could respond kinder and a bit more thoughtfully, and if I put my argument a wee bit forward more thoughtfully, then some people might listen, as opposed to just being like, you're a fucking idiot. So yes, so I don't think that Chuck Palahniuk as an author can be classed as a subgenre, but I feel like it is very different from anything else that I ordinarily choose to read. I am mainly a fantasy, YA fantasy, horror kind of gal, and then I just have an unhealthy obsession with Chuck Palahniuk. And so the first book that I ever read by Chuck Palahniuk was Snuff. I read it when I was quite young, probably too young for the content that is in this book, but it just thoroughly enthralled me. I really enjoyed it. The thing that I enjoy most about Chuck Palahniuk's writing is that he always pushes my boundaries, whether it is pushing my boundaries on an opinion, or whether it is getting me to love a character and be rooting for this character in a situation where I know I shouldn't be rooting for them, because they are going against societal norms or doing something that is a bit taboo and sometimes outright illegal. So yes, that's why I love Chuck Palahniuk's writing, because he pushes those boundaries, and this was the first book that I read that I felt had really shocked me, and it stayed with me for a long time afterwards. I could not stop thinking about it, and I then started my foray into other fucked up books to try and get that same wee thrill where it's maybe pushing my boundaries. And sometimes you get a lot of authors who write horrific, disgusting things in an effort to shock you, and that's no what I'm meaning. Like, I don't want it to be disgusting for a shock. Like, I want it to genuinely make me conflicted about how I'm feeling in a situation, and I think that Snuff definitely does that. I'm trying not to tell you exactly what it is that makes me conflicted, because I recommend that people check it out and then we can have a chat about it. I didn't want to spoil the entire book, but it was just brilliant, and I think that that's something that a lot of Chuck Palahniuk's books have done for me, is I'll read it and I'll just be like, whoa, like, didn't think that I'd be sitting here thinking about this today, but here I am. And I just really enjoy that. I think that although there are characters in fantasy that are maybe morally grey and a bit morally ambiguous, like, it's fine to still sort of root for them. I think that some of the characters that Chuck Palahniuk writes, you know that you should not be rooting for them, but like, you still kind of are, because he's managed to make you connect to them in such a way that like they could do anything and you're like, aye, but come on, like, they're no bad guy. So that's something that I thoroughly enjoy. Definitely Scottish short story collections by Scottish authors or comedians. I have a few of them on my shelves. It's something that I always really enjoy reading, and I feel like when you start talking to somebody about a short story collection, a lot of people just check out. They're like, nah, not interested, it's not a book, and can be a wee bit dismissive, even though it actually is. And I think that unless it is a short story collection that is about something that's like properly profound, they're just like, no. But I really enjoy comedy Scottish short stories. It's like wee episodes of Chewing the Fat, but in book form, which is what every Scottish person needs in their life. This is Hings by Chris McQueen, and this is Chris McQueen's first book, and I think it was maybe one of the first Scottish short story collections that I had really read, and since then I have acquired and I have read a fair few, and it's just something that I really like. I think that Scottish humour is so unique and dark, so I just really enjoy it, and I think that it isn't something that is celebrated enough. I think that Scottish humour is parallel to none, personally, probably biased being Scottish, but I just think that it's so overlooked for your typical American comedy that is sort of in the mainstream, and I just think that we're funny in a different way, in a way that I prefer. So the genre I have read the least of is literary fiction, although I did tiptoe into it last year a little bit. It's probably the genre that I am least likely to gravitate towards. Sometimes I find that it can be quite intimidating, and I also feel like because I've read fantasy and horror for so many years that I can pick up a book and I'm like, I know if there's a trope in it or a certain character type or a plot point in it that's going to interest me, then I know whether I'm going to either love it or hate it or not. And because I haven't read as much literary fiction, I find it far more difficult to decide if I am going to like that book or not. And there's been some that I've taken a punt on that have just been absolutely terrible, and there are others that have been proper wee hidden gems. So I think if I'm going to delve into literary fiction more, that I really need to narrow down what I enjoy about it and what I would be hoping to get out of it, and then maybe ask some people who are literary fiction readers for some recommendations based on that, because I just frankly don't have a Scooby. And I also feel it's a wee bit intimidating at times because literary fiction, although fantasy can be quite hard hitting at times, I feel like literary fiction deals with a lot more serious topics, and on the channel I do read a lot of fantasy, so it is often dragons and mermaids and swearing, which, you know, isn't a great lead into maybe talking about some more serious topics. So sometimes that can be a wee bit intimidating, and I feel like there are people who read literary fiction and it is their like ride or die genre, and they have far more interesting comparisons or points to make based on the years and years of literary fiction that they have read, and they're just in a better place to make comments on it than me. I don't really feel like I would bring anything new or unique to the table, and why would you watch me ramble shite about it when you could watch somebody who is, you know, far more educated and far more eloquent and have their thoughts pulled together, whereas I just sit and ramble about dragons for 20 minutes and hope that you like it every single week. So sometimes it can be a wee bit intimidating for that perspective as well. That I read some absolute crackers last year that I really did enjoy. That is it from me. Thank you again to Scott and Nell for tagging me in this video. Hopefully you're enjoying everything that you're reading at the moment, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!